There are moments in life that leave scars no one can see, and for Johnny Depp, one of those moments happened more than 3 decades ago. Even now, whenever he tries to speak about it, you can hear it in his voice. It doesn't stay steady, it cracks, falters, and suddenly you realize he's holding back more than just words. This isn't the Johnny Depp the world imagines when they think of the daring, eccentric, larger-than-life actor who gave us some of the most iconic characters in film history. This is the side of him that carries the weight of a night that changed Hollywood forever. The night River Phoenix, one of the brightest young stars of his generation, lost his life outside Depp's own club. For years, Depp has chosen silence. He doesn't lean into the headlines, he doesn't chase attention on the subject, but the few times he has let his guard slip, the emotion in his voice tells you everything you need to know. To understand why this moment still lingers so heavily in Depp's life, we have to go back to the early 90s. Depp wasn't yet the global icon, the Jack Sparrow of Disney, or the eccentric Willy Wonka that kids would grow up with. He was young, rebellious, and carving his own path. He had started making a name for himself with roles that stood out because they were different, roles that had a quiet depth, characters who didn't quite fit in, who carried pain beneath their surface. In real life, he was doing the same. He wasn't just acting, he was also deeply tied to the music scene. He picked up a guitar long before he picked up a script, and he surrounded himself with musicians, poets, outsiders. That's how he ended up opening the Viper Room, a nightclub on the Sunset Strip that quickly became the spot for Hollywood's young elite. On the surface, the Viper Room was everything Depp loved: music, freedom, an escape from the polished, artificial side of Hollywood. But what he couldn't have known is that the club would one day carry a shadow so heavy it would never leave him. On the night of October 31, 1993, River Phoenix collapsed outside the Viper Room. Just 23 years old, River was already a legend in the making. He had the kind of talent that doesn't come around often, the kind of presence that makes people say he could have been one of the greatest of all time. And then, in one devastating moment, it was over. For Depp, it wasn't just the tragedy of losing someone from his circle. It wasn't just the fact that it happened in front of his club. It was the way everything unfolded in the aftermath. The cameras came, the headlines exploded, and the whispers started. Was Depp responsible? Did the Viper Room have a darker side? He wasn't the one who put River in that position, but he couldn't escape the fact that his name would forever be tied to that night. Imagine carrying that weight, knowing that no matter what you achieved in your career, people would always remember you in connection with a tragedy you couldn't undo. And that's exactly what Depp did. He carried it, quietly, without explanation. Over the years, journalists asked him about River, about that night, about how it felt to watch it unfold. Most of the time, he brushed it off. He said very little. But when he did let himself answer, when he let a memory slip into words, his voice would change. You could hear the crack. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't the smooth, charming Depp people expected. It was raw, human, and filled with the kind of emotion that only comes from replaying something in your mind again and again for decades. That's the part most people miss. They assume Depp avoided the subject to protect his career, or because he didn't want bad press. But listen carefully to him and you realize it's not about image, it's about loyalty. Depp has always been fiercely protective of the people he cares about. Even in his silence, he's honoring River. He isn't turning his pain into a story for profit. He isn't feeding the tabloids with details. Instead, he keeps the memory private, sacred, the way real friendships should be remembered. And if you look closely at Depp's work after that night, you can see how it shaped him. His characters became more layered, more haunted, more fragile beneath the surface. Edward Scissorhands wasn't just a fantasy character, he was a reflection of an outsider who felt too much. Captain Jack Sparrow wasn't just a pirate, he was a man hiding pain behind humor, a trickster with shadows in his eyes. Even in lighter roles, there's always been this undercurrent in Depp's performances, something that feels lived in, as though he's pulling from a part of himself he doesn't talk about out loud. That kind of depth doesn't come from technique alone. It comes from grief, from loss, from nights that replay in your head when you're alone. Hollywood has never been kind when it comes to tragedy. Some stars choose to tell all, writing memoirs, doing interviews, letting the public in on every detail. But Depp? He chose the opposite. His silence is a statement in itself. In a culture where oversharing has become the norm, where every secret is turned into a headline, Depp's decision to say almost nothing about that night is a reminder that not every truth belongs to the world. Some truths are too painful, too personal, and too sacred to give away. When you really think about it, that's part of what makes Depp so different. He's not just an actor, he's an artist who channels his experiences into his work rather than into sound bites. The voice that cracks when he mentions River isn't weakness. It's honesty. It's a glimpse behind the curtain, showing us that even people who seem untouchable carry their own private battles. And maybe that's why fans connect with him so deeply. We don't just watch Johnny Depp because he can disappear into a role. We watch him because we sense that he's lived through pain, that his characters come alive not because of makeup or costumes, but because he pours himself into them. Every time he picks up a guitar, every time he steps on a set, part of that night, part of River, is still with him. The question is, should he ever tell the full story? Should Depp open up completely about what happened, about what he saw, about what he's carried all these years? Some would argue yes, after all, history deserves clarity. Others believe his silence is the most respectful choice, protecting the dignity of a friend who can no longer speak for himself. That's the delicate line Depp has walked for more than 30 years. Silence on the outside, but on the inside, a voice that trembles whenever the memory rises to the surface. And maybe, in the end, that's enough. Maybe we don't need every detail spelled out. Maybe the break in his voice tells us everything we need to know, that River mattered, that his loss cut deep, and that even the brightest lights in Hollywood can leave shadows that never fade. So what do you think? Should Johnny Depp ever reveal everything about that night, or is his silence the greatest tribute he can give to River Phoenix? Share your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. And if you found yourself drawn into this story, there's another video you'll want to watch right after this one, where we explore another side of Depp that rarely makes headlines but reveals even more about who he really is. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss it. Because these are the stories that remind us, behind the fame, behind the characters, there's always a human being carrying memories we may never fully understand.